Hey, so this is my first vlog. It's me, Jake Englander here. Normally I do comedy, but I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm also a nerd. I have a degree in business management. That's what I got my bachelor's in, but I almost majored in history, and I also love sci-fi. I've even written some of my own books, and just big avid consumer of movies and books. So today we're kicking off a new vlog, and the topic's going to be about which books I think are much different and also better than their movies. And we're going to start with just a real classic that's criminally underrated, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. I've read this a couple times since I got it last year. I've always been a huge Blade Runner fan. I saw the original Ridley Scott movie a while ago, and then when the new one came out, I saw that too. I should say, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is hard science fiction. It's not soft science fiction, and that's not to denigrate. First, I should explain what those mean. Soft science fiction is, think Star Wars, where obviously science is happening, right? But it's not explained. It's not, and the physics are not ironclad, right? If something goes wrong, the movie doesn't stop, and you go, "Hey, how come I heard that explosion in space?" That wouldn't happen, right? That's soft science fiction, to my understanding. And so hard science fiction, right? You got stuff like I would consider Alien. I would consider definitely. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. It's thin, but the way they explain the science is much more in depth. It's only 220 pages, but the science within it is pretty. I would say it's reminiscent of Asimov, where he's definitely hard science fiction. If you think iRobot or Foundations, where you've got really technical explanations. And all the physics have to line up, and if it didn't, then they would explain how it actually has to, and yeah. So enough about that distinction. So I really, really loved Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which Blade Runner was that movie's inspired by. And one of the main ways that I found it to be different was, first of all, Deckard's character, the main guy. You guys know, as Harrison Ford to be this really tough dude. And I just think that his character is so much more... it's really hard to portray the subtlety of a character like Deckard in a movie, right? I think Harrison Ford did a really good job, but he had just done, I think, Star Wars before that, so I don't think he was really putting the level of complexity that is present in Deckard's character in the book. He's more analytical, I will say. I think there's a little bit of a crudeness to Harrison Ford's portrayal of him. Think when he's talking to the android who's naked, who's a snake woman, he's sort of joking around, he's a little bit lewd. I don't really feel like Deckard's character has that dimension to him. And I think that it's really interesting because, in the Blade Runner movie, I like how much more ambiguous it is with Deckard. Like, is he a replicant? Is he a Blade Runner? Is he a person? Whatever, right? And they don't really tell you, and it's sort of up to you. And even if you don't, and you can even enjoy the movie if you don't want to know all that, right? Like, the movie is done so that you can enjoy it on an entertainment level. But you also could read into it if you know, sure. But even then, they don't get into any of the hard science behind it. It's just that some of the plot dimensions are present from the book if you're looking for them, is what I was trying to point out. But it's interesting. I think that, the Soviets are not mentioned at all in the movies, and just Mars in general, I feel like, gets a smaller part in the movies. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I did really enjoy the way that the movie portrayed the Voight Kampff test, which I think was kind of an interesting play on like the Turing test. I think, to my recollection, and I'm looking through it, it seems pretty well. Like they took that almost shot for shot from the book, or line for line from the book. And that's important. It's one of the best scenes. With Rachel, and she's being guided. Is she a person? Is she a robot, etc. But let's see. I think that I think the theme of immortality is portrayed better in like the quest for wanting to live forever. I think is portrayed more consistently throughout in the book. Like I think the movie kind of emphasizes it heavily in the second and third act, but at first in the movie you don't really understand their motivations at all. And I feel like I always had this sense when reading the book that the robots, like all of them wanted more, right? They wanted sentience, they wanted life. There's this yearning that's sort of foreshadowed in the book that maybe you just can't do that in a movie. Philip K. Dick, is incredible at the foreshadowing throughout. I like how they get into the dimensions of laser guns in this book. A lot of that's another difference between soft sci-fi and hard sci-fi, right? And I would argue that the movies are kind of softer sci-fi because they don't show you, oh, here's how his laser gun works. He just pews, right? And I think that's interesting. But they explain exactly how the laser tubes work, and to my understanding, you could do that. I think the only issue with lasers is that they would not have spread, they would have too much spread, rather. You wouldn't be able to confine them to a binary blast, right, where you think of, oh, that's one bullet or whatever of a laser, right? I think it would just go and just keep going, and that would be a problem, right? Because how do you stop that? We'll get to Dune later, but I think Dune does a pretty good job of also showing kind of how lasers would operate, those drills that they've got that cut through walls and stuff. So, just how it keeps extending, and it's not just this finite little blast. I really like how developed the, robot types are that you get into, oh, this is the Nexus 6 versus this is, these are the older models, the newer models. I think that's not to say that the movies didn't do that, but it was more general, certainly. What comes to mind is in, the second one, Ryan Gosling and the older model he's fighting, they talk about newer models versus older models, how they're different. But they don't get into oh, I'm Nexus 6, you're Nexus 4, anything like that, and how those are different. I think JR, his character, is definitely better developed in the book, his motivations and what drives him. And I love the actor that plays him. He's also in Deadwood, plays Evie Farnham. Can't remember the actor's name for some reason, but anyhow, super gifted performance by him. I think it was a little bit, maybe it hasn't aged that well, that whole part, but maybe that's just me, the movie portrayal. I feel like it's less campy in the book. There's a little bit of a musical kind of, I don't know, with all those dolls in JR's place, it just feels kind of is this a musical? What's happening here? I always zone out a little bit during those few minutes or whatever. And then it gets intense when the main android comes back in, for sure. But so Pris is interesting. I like her character better in the book also. That's pretty universal. I think all the characters are better developed because you just have more time. You can do things more nuanced and more subtly, and that really emphasizes the contrast between different models of Blade Runners and different types of people also, and it contrasts everybody against each other in this really interesting juxtaposition. And it just shows, that everyone's, not only is morality relative, but so is like, even sentience, right? Like they don't even process things the same way, and like, what would appall a robot might be fine to a human, and vice versa. And it's very interesting. Yeah. Just collecting my thoughts before I get into my next point. So I think it's interesting. Like I always felt like the movie made Pris kind of. She was. I don't know. I just thought that the females in the book had the female robots had a little bit more agency, maybe, or seemed less. Like in the movie, it seems like the male Blade Runners are kind of more tough, and the female Blade Runners are kind of, I don't know, not like they're not a threat, but they seem like easier to be dealt with. It seems easier to kill them, those replicants or whatever. Like if you'll think about how like the big boss, and I guess they changed that in the sequel though. Anyhow, getting ahead of myself. And so they really just get so much more into Mars and Soviets and the colonies, And I like how they really get into las guns and laser tubes, and like, there's specific types of laser tubes. There's some that like you can remove the triggering circuit from, and so like you can't take a laser tube from someone and shoot it at them because it's like, no, I have the remote. So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting concepts that are explored that they don't really develop that strongly in the movies ever. But it's just a time thing, probably, just cut for budget and time. I think Blade Runner, in the similar vein of Alien, they probably cut. Ridley does this a lot, where he probably cuts like an hour of scenes and scripts that he usually. Like Alien originally was supposed to be like 3 hours, then it was 2 because of like he needed a whole nother million for the temple scene and stuff. So yeah, it's just interesting. I don't want to give too much away of the book, just because I don't want to. I'm not going to tell you guys kind of plot points, but just kind of keep reviewing how it changes from the movie versus the book. There's definitely a lot more officers than Rick Deckard. Like, there's a lot more people in the book. And I think Deckard talks more, too. Definitely, yeah. They developed this sort of silent protagonist thing for him. And I think that was even more done up in the second Blade Runner, just because that's, like, Ryan Gosling's thing. But he's not like a strong silent type. He thinks about stuff. He's analytical. He's smart. Yeah. And he doesn't have a problem expressing himself. He's not withdrawn. There are times where he doesn't say stuff because he's being interrogated, but in general, he's not like the quiet type that Ryan Gosling in Blade Runner 2 is, or whatever we're gonna call that movie, just for shorthand. Yeah. They really get into the laws of robotics. I think that's cool. How they're different from us, how they're not, how androids change from people. And I think in that, and they do this well in the movie too, but it's done even better in the book. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the idea that humans aren't just a brain and neurons firing, but that there's more than that there's a soul, right? That we have love, that we have something beyond just animal instinct. And, that's sort of contrasted throughout with androids. And, like, do they have that? Do they not? Are they just, trying to keep living? And, it's interesting. And do all people have that? Or are there androids that are exceptions to that, All right, I'll probably wrap this up. But, yeah, I think everybody, really should give this book a read. I hope you guys enjoyed this first segment of books versus movies, I guess we'll call it. That'll be the running title for now. And Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say is I really like Roy's character better in the book. That's not to say that the actor did a brilliant job. He's scary, actually. He's really good. But you just have more time to develop things, and he gets to talk about Polakov. He gets to talk about all these people that they don't really get to develop, because it's just like there's not time. And they really get into Mars. There's this monologue at the end that Roy does that's even longer in the book that they really cut for time in the movie, and people say it's more impactful in the movie, but I don't feel like that's true. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can find that and read it because it's very impactful what Roy says. I should have bookmarked this. It's fine. I'll put it in the comments. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll find it. Yeah. Okay. Alright, yeah, I give up. It's fine. I'll put it in the comments. I thought it'd be worth it. Sorry to keep you waiting for that last part. But anyway, hope you enjoyed, guys. And, yeah, really, really great book. And hope you enjoyed my analysis of the two media. And we're going to probably be doing either Dune or maybe Drive next. But I've got a lot of other books that are adapted to movies that I can do. And a lot of other topics I got for vlogging, because podcasting is fun, but there's like long form ideas I have that I want to get out, and like they're also not stand-up related, so it just feels like this is a good medium to like get those thoughts out. If it gets a following, cool. If it doesn't, whatever. Alrighty, peace.